Hey guys, so in this video we're going to go over a couple of Armor Stacker setups for the new event that's coming out on the 20th. And we'll go over my thoughts on the Ascendancies, and we'll cover a few POBs that I made for some of the builds I want to try out. Okay, so first of all, what Ascendancies are going to be good for armor stacking? And right now I think there's like 2 Ascendancies that are going to be pretty good. And I guess before we go over that, just talk about like the state of armor stacking. And in the event, this event, it's actually armor stacker is actually a lot stronger than it was in the Settlers League. Looking at pretty much about like double the DPS on medium setups as well as better defense overall. In this event, it will be possible to actually reach or go over Transcendence levels of max hit for elemental and phys damage without even playing Transcendence, at least in the way that I've set it up. Although the gear required to do a lot of these setups might not even be possible, but I have prepared quite a few different budget levels, some that are probably a bit more realistic, and even those are at probably like Transcendence levels of tankiness, and damage wise, yeah, even quite a bit more than before. Anyways, so let's go over the Ascendancies, and first of all, let's talk about what is going to be probably the #1 Ascendancy for Armor Stacker. It's going to be the Mr. Aristocrat. Why the Aristocrat? Okay, Aristocrat. But there's a lot of things going on here, and it looks pretty basic at first glance, but you kind of have to understand what all these things are kind of doing. And first of all, the main problems with Armor Stacker at the moment is, first of all, you're a build stacking auras, getting a lot of clusters, getting a lot of jewels, spending a lot of points traveling around the passive tree to pick up important keystones that you need that are all around the passive tree, right? So basically, passive points are a premium for these kind of builds, and getting 9 extra passive points, and you know, if we are to believe that every single one of these is 1 extra passive point, you know, which I think is probably the case because they actually showed the small node here. I mean, they don't really show these small nodes on any other Ascendancy, so you would assume that all of these are 1 extra passive point, which means we get 9 extra passive points by being an Aristocrat. Okay, so basically, yeah, so you can imagine what you can do, and usually on Armor Stacker, you're kind of basically cutting out a lot of these like nice quality of life or defense or damage increases that were on the passive tree in order to go get more cluster jewels or get more go get that keystone or whatever, right? But now you can actually go and get those things. So basically, instead of like 5 extra passive skills, this would be like 30% more damage and I don't know what 50 or 60% increased energy shield. Basically you get the idea, right? But you can do a lot of things with this, and so basically, yeah, just that on its own is pretty insane. And then let's go over here to the level of all skill gems. So this, if you're an aura stacker, then levels to skill gems are pretty important because that's the base of the aura that's getting scaled. So if we increase the base of the aura, then we get basically more aura effect in a way. It's like pseudo aura effect kind of thing. So that's very nice. And then the quality to all skill gems. Now this is pretty insane because first of all, your purities are, the quality on purities gives you extra resistance, so that means more armor. And then if you're playing a Molten Strike build, the Molten Strike quality is more damage basically. So this is like 15% more damage to Molten Strike. And then, of course, all of the other benefits you'll be getting from the quality on your gems. Okay, so that's pretty insane. So just these notes here is insane damage, right? And defense as well. You're getting more levels to your discipline and all that kind of stuff. Okay, and then after that, we're going to be getting the 30% increased intelligence. The shock doesn't really matter because we're always immune to shock anyways, but basically Armor Stacker is like, so you get quite a lot of DPS, I would say, compared to a lot of classes. But one problem Armor Stacker has, ever since basically the armor applies to elemental resistance and Transcendence were pretty much kind of like killed off, Armor Stacker has had problems getting defense. Now, in Settlers, what we did was we built a lot of energy shield and we used endurance charges, and that worked out pretty well, I would say. Definitely a very good form of defense. And this league, what we're going to be doing is we're pretty much going to be in stacking and fire red stacking or cold rest stacking, whichever one, doesn't really matter at this point. And then we use the evasion energy shield mastery to get increased evasion per intelligence. And then on the body armor, we can do things like, less damage taken per intelligence. And with the amount of energy shield we'll be getting, basically it's, kind of insane, I would say. So basically the whole Aristocrat tree is pretty much everything you would pretty much want on the armor stacker. I would say you get good defense scaling, and this is also, I guess, damage as well. Then we get all the passive points, we get the skill levels, and we also get the quality. So gonna be pretty cool, I think. Okay, so probably the second one I would say is gonna be Mr. Smurfcaster. So this guy, first of all, pretty cool in that you can play a cold convert lightning, armor stacker. I played this. One of the first armor stacker builds I played was one way back in the day when, March of the Legion had, like, you could put 4 auras to March of the Legion. You played like the March of the Legion piano. And at that time, a lot of people were doing was we did Call the Brotherhood and converted the lightning to cold, and we used hatred. So that was pretty fun. And now, once again, you can do the cold convert armor stacker, which is going to be kind of fun to do, kind of like a blast from the past kind of thing. Anyways, and then there's a lot of other cool things. But overall, this guy is pretty decent damage, I would say. But I guess you kind of have to think of the Forbidden Flame Jewels, right? So this guy's Forbidden Flame Jewels are, you get the Escape Artist, or you get the Suppression, right? So probably going to be Escape Artist, so that's okay. But then if you think about Aristocrat, he gets Inspirational, which is like another 30% more aura effect. So at the end of the day, this guy is doing half the damage of what a Aristocrat does, pretty much. But does have some very nice defenses baked in. So let's go cover this guy. So we get the, first of all, we're going to be getting, is going to be the sea legs. So this is nice. We don't have to actually worry about making an armor with recombinators, which is, I guess, kind of nice if you're playing on a budget, so you don't really have to worry about crafting that. But it is kind of, once you do get an armor with the overcap mod on it, then this Ascendancy is just kind of like dead. It doesn't really do much. And like going for a double convert, cold and lightning, not really even all that worth it, because I mean, if you're not playing Marauder with the Salio's water or whatever it's called, it's pretty much like very inefficient to actually scale both resistances. Okay, so it's nice. It's good like SSF or whatever, or if you're don't really like making these kind of recombinating armors, then it's good. It's nice that it's like in the Ascendancy, you don't have to worry about it, but end game it is kind of basically kind of pointless. Okay, and then let's see. The Ghost of the Deep is okay. I think as like the 4th Ascendancy, you either take the touched one. I mean, it doesn't really do much because increased damage is pretty much nothing. Attack speed, it's nice, but then we already have haste, pretty juiced up haste, so it doesn't really do that much. I guess the only good thing is the movement speed. Okay, so either you take this or you do the reverse chill, and probably reverse chill is gonna be better. But anyways, so we go with the cold convert, which is nice, and then we do glacial wave. This is gonna be nice because if we can get big chills, that means we're gonna be taking less damage, so that's a little bit more defense baked into the Ascendancy, and then the reverse chill, obviously. What about the Paladin? All right, people are probably going to ask about Paladin. I actually think Gambler probably be better than Paladin, but anyways, it's okay, right? It's just a worse version of Aristocrat, pretty much. The level 30 gems, not really that important. I mean, really early on, they might be impactful, but I mean, not to the point where it's like makes a big difference. And end of the day, Aristocrat probably gonna be better. But let's just see. The elemental relics, it's like, I played with these before, and they just constantly died. So it just really didn't feel worth it. And then the anger and hatred aura pretty much don't do anything anyways. And then the magic utility flask, this is pretty big. Pretty nice damage increase, and then also light divinity, and then bring to battle. So a lot of increased damage taken, but you can already get a lot of penetration with just like the awakened lightning penetration or whatever, and then a penetration affix on your gloves, and then penetration on your what do you call it, tincture. So then this increased damage not really actually how would you say, 25, 20. So it's not actually 45% more damage, right? Because you're already kind of getting into diminishing returns, I think, at that point. And then the rest of the stuff is all pretty much garbage. Overall, just a worse version of Aristocrat. And Gambler, kind of fun too, because growing accumulator, this is actually a pretty decent damage increase. If you did go crit, this might be kind of interesting. I did actually make a crit PoB. It's kind of interesting, up to like 9 billion DPS. That was on Aristocrat though. This is pretty much garbage. And then reverse odds, this is actually pretty big too. Okay, so this is the Aristocrat in the event, and this is kind of like on a high budget min-max setup. This is kind of what you'll be looking at. And I mean, probably not even going to be possible to build this in the event, and if it's only 1 month. But anyways, I think it's good to have an idea of what the build will look like when you completely, you know, min-max it and the build is actually finished. See where you will actually be going, right? Okay, so let's talk about how we're setting up the character this time around, and we are focusing on stacking intelligence. You can see we can get up to about 2,000 intelligence. This allows us to do two things. First of all, we can use the Evasion Energy Shield Mastery to get evasion as well. So that means our intelligence is now giving us Energy Shield and evasion at the same time, so we can scale defense and damage from one stat. And it is going to be better DPS wise to scale pure fire resistance. And you can see on all of these clusters, I think it's going to be better to be running these all attributes intelligence ones, even though it is a little bit less DPS. And if we went pure fire res stacking, we could go all the way up to probably like 5 billion DPS. But the thing is, like, it's a little bit less, but you get way more energy shield and way more defense, right? So intelligence giving us energy shield for more max hit, and also on the body armor this time around, I do want to try out the less damage taking per int, because if we have 2k int, then it's going to be 10% less damage. Even at a 1k int, you get 5% less damage, so it's like an endurance charge. I mean, might not seem that worth, and maybe it's not all that good on a lower budget setup when you don't have a lot of intelligence, but once you do get a lot, I think it definitely is worth dropping just 30% grace aura effect for more damage reduction. Okay, and then aside from that, we are only running 3 endurance charges. The endurance charges are only coming from Enduring Cry, so it is like kind of sus, you could say, but I mean, even without them, you still have plenty of max hit. Aside from that, we are also going to be using Frost Shield for defense. So let's just kind of take away some of these things. So you can see it's very reliable. Let's say the charge time very slow, I mean very fast, so you can pretty much use it like Molten Shell. And then as for guard skill, there's 2 options, and since we do have a very big HP pool, Immortal Call is going to be better in terms of actual like damage mitigation or damage reduction. But if it is kind of clunky to use, I might go back to Molten Shell. So we'll have to kind of see what happens. But you can see even without any kind of buffs, we are seeing about 177-ish elemental max hit, which is very, very high, I would say, for these armor stacker builds nowadays. Okay, and then for recovery, this time around, we are going to have a very decent amount of energy shield regen. You can see without our Frost Shield up, about 2,500 ES regen, so not like super all that much. And we could go for the Fire Mastery, but I think since we're not Scion with the Guardian Ascendancy, this Fire Mastery is not really all that value. You can see it's only giving us about 700 ES regen. So this time around, we go a little bit of ES regen with Zealot's Oath, and then we will be going for Ghost Reaver with Instant Leech. So we'll get a pretty decent amount of Energy Shield Leech, and that should be enough for sustain on pretty much all of the budgets. Going for pretty much just like a little bit of ES regen and then a lot of ES Leech. Okay, aside from that, there is a couple of differences in some of the links. So one of the main differences is that we're going to be using Concentrated Effect instead of the Lightning Penetration, since we are getting a lot of penetration already and exposure from the glove mod, and then also from our tincture. Then on bosses, the lightning penetration is not going to be as much damage as something like Concentrated Effect. But anyways, once you do have enough penetration, Concentrated Effect is the better option for DPS. And then, and not really just because of the less area on this does not actually impact your projectile hits. In most cases, it's still going to be 12 on average with Concentrated Effect. Okay, and then Endurance Charge on melee stun. This is something you can try out as well. It's a little bit less damage overall, but this will give you consistent endurance charges. Or I'm not really sure how consistent this will be, and I don't even know if you can use this on bosses, right? Because I've never actually used this support skill. But if this does work on bosses, then it's probably something you can consider using. If not, then probably don't even use it. Okay, so that is the skill gems. Oh, also, so running Blood and Sand, but you could easily swap this out, for Blood and Sand, and I'll go over a couple of configurations. You see, I've made like quite a few actually, right? Just showing different gear setups. But anyways, let's go over those after we cover the items. This time around, we will have to get a Fortify Replica Dream Feather because we don't have free Fortify, and also going to need a Resolute Technique. The other items are pretty much exactly the same as we've used before, although when you're making your body armor, you probably have to decide if you want to get Spell Suppression on it, because if you're going to go Spell Suppression, you will need to get that on your armor. The Necrotic armor this time around, I think, is going to be better than the Energy Shield armor. Well, because we already have so much Energy Shield, losing the Necrotic armor is quite a big DPS loss. So I think since we are stacking enough int to give us a good enough size Energy Shield pool, we can get away with running the Necrotic armor this time around. So very big damage increase, being able to run this and still have a big Energy Shield pool. Alright, so let's go over some of the other setups real quick. Let's go down this way first, and we'll go cover the lower budget ones. So this is your just normal DPS one we've been looking at. This is not running any spell suppression, just your standard armor stacker build, just pumping DPS. You could actually go for even more DPS. Like we mentioned, you could get Grace Aura effect on your body armor. Right, and if you did want to go for a pure DPS setup with this, using the normal body armor with just like the Grace Aura effect, and then running pure like fire resistance clusters, then it would look something like this, right? Quite a bit lower maximum hit, but around 6 billion DPS. Pretty insane, right? Anyway, so there's a lot of ways you can customize it. So I've prepared all these loadouts. You can kind of see what the stats look like if you went for different stats. So this is basically going for full DPS. And the other one here, number 2, is a more balanced approach, I think, where you build a bit more for defense, losing a bit of damage, but 4 billion is already more than enough for everything in the game. Okay, so after that, we do have some tankier setups over here. Now, the first one is exactly the same as the DPS 2 setup, but except we are going for spell suppression. And you can see we drop down to about 3 billion DPS, but we get spell suppression and our max hit is close to 700k, right? So pretty insane max hit. The sort of setup in these are all sort of the same, right? And I think this one is also running even Blood and Sand as well, so you could get even tankier with Flesh and Stone. And if we go to the other tank version here, this one's quite a bit lower, but you can see 840k max hit. This one is going to be doing something a bit different. So instead of Inspirational, we're going to be taking Masterful Form. We're going to pick up all the Frenzies, and then we're going to use Relicash. So that means we get, I don't know how many, about 8 endurance charges on top of everything we had already. And that basically just gives us an insane layer of additional damage reduction. And yeah, so DPS 2 actually still pretty good. Okay, and what if you want it to be even tankier? Well, you can use a shield as well, like a +1 Frenzy shield. This is the same idea with the Relicash, using Masterful Form. And only like barely a billion DPS, but you can see the max hit is pretty insane in this setup, using the shield for the extra frenzy, more energy shield, and then also going for Relicash and using Flesh and Stone. You could swap this out for Arctic Armor, probably. Very insane. Like Transcendence didn't even get this level of tankiness back in whenever was it Affliction or whatever when I was running it. So this is probably the tankiest armor stacker setup that we've seen so far. Okay, and there is this other one here. This is sort of not really probably a playable character. I mean, the build will work. You can actually play this, but it's not very tanky. You can see pretty squishy, and this is with buffs like Frost Shield and our guard skill. So you can see kind of a glass cannon-ish, right? But you get like 10 billion DPS, so it doesn't really matter because everything dies. Okay, so let's go over some of the medium setups. This one is more of a DPS approach where we're going for the Grace Aura effect on the Necrotic Armor. We're not building spell suppression. Probably easier to get started, and the medium version we're running only 3 passive voices. So that is quite nice. There's no double corrupted items. And just a single Grace Aura effect ring. You're going to be using Ashes of the Stars. You could also run Eternal Struggle if you have a good one. It's a little bit less DPS than Grace, but you get a little bit more energy shield. But I think Ashes probably end of the day going to be better. And then I think everything else is pretty much the same, just worse versions. And the clusters here, these are like int all attribute clusters as well. So you could probably get quite a bit more DPS if you went for pure fire res clusters, but you can see the stats way better than it was in Settlers League. So this is probably like more a realistic endgame setup for most people that are actually grinding for the build. 3 passive voices, not that expensive, and you know, it'd probably be more expensive in the event, but in Settlers, you know, these were like, at one point they were like 19 div, right? So not that bad at all. Okay, and then the other medium setup, this one is the same as the other one, but just running spell suppression. And you can see DPS still very good actually for cutting out quite a bit of damage. I think we did lose our frenzy charges. Yeah, we lost our frenzies, but not really the end of the world, I think. And we lost frenzy and calling strike pretty much to pick up the spell suppression wheel. You're going to have to get a lot of tattoos, so running spell suppression is going to be a bit rough. I think yeah, we don't even have suppression on the Watcher's Eye, so you can get Watcher's Eye suppression with Grace, make it a bit easier. Okay, so that's this setup, and then there is another tankier setup. This one is the Masterful Form setup on a medium budget, what it would look like. Very nice max it. This is pretty much what Transcendence had back in the day. DPS though quite a bit lower. This is running a shield with +1 frenzy. Like, you could run this setup with just 2 swords, honestly, and you know, pretty decent max hit. But I mean, not that different than using the aura effect one, because I guess the aura effect is giving you more energy shield, right? So end of the day, I think, yeah, this one maybe not so worth, because the big hits are probably still going to kill you. Maybe not. Anyways, I think we are running. Are we running Flesh and Stone here? I don't think so. I don't think we had enough reservation to fit it in. Okay, so that's those 3 setups, and then we have some low budget setups. Now these ones, these are still running Mageblood, right, and Nimbus, but there's no clusters, there's no voices, so that's the main thing. And the Enlightens are level 3, well, they're level 4. Okay. Anyways, but this is what it would look like with no voices, pretty much. And for this low budget setup, you could see DPS very insane, I would say, very, very high. Max hit, it's good enough. All right, you can do Valdos with this. I just gotta be a little bit careful, but definitely doable. This is enough to do the 10% less damage per item Valdos, by the way. This kind of DPS is more than enough. Okay, and then we are going to be running some block, and we're getting our block from these large clusters. So I mean, you could run whatever you want, but I think when you have this low ES and recovery is a little bit questionable, it's actually a bit more ES regen, but it's showing our Frost Shield. All right, so let's just turn these off. All right, so about 1.5k ES regen normally, and then 2k leech. So that's like pretty good, but I think you will run into sustain problems because you're just constantly getting hit, right? So getting even just 40% block is really going to help your sustain, right? And this is not glancing blows block, is just pure block. So whenever you block, you just don't take damage. So that's going to help quite a bit, and we just get it on the clusters. We get 3 clusters here, and then on the other node, it doesn't really matter, but you could run like 3 Devastator nodes, so you have 45% chance to explode, which might be kind of fun. I don't know, you could kind of do whatever you want here. You can get some leech on here, mana leech, life leech, and then convert it into ES leech with Ghost Reaver, and then you could actually get rid of all of this, but you probably do want the instant leech, I think. This low budget setup also just running the Formless Flame. And guys, this is why Smurfcaster is just bad, because this is a Smurfcaster Ascendancy pretty much. It's like a 10C item or 2C item, 5C item. And you might think, what about if you just do a cold and fire overcap? But it's really inefficient to stack both, right? And you're better off just going one and then getting a lot of other more damage multipliers from other places. I did POBs, and we'll go over the Smurfcaster POB later, but this build on the low budget is more damage than the Smurfcaster running like 3 passive voices and all this kind of fancy setup. Okay, so this one is the same build, but he went out and got spell suppression. So this Smurfcaster is a little bit more refined than most people, and you know, he has a little bit of money in his pockets to get these little tattoos, right? Because you are going to need a lot of tattoos. And we get our suppression from suppression wheel, and then on the body armor, and I think we need to get it on the Watcher's Eye. But yeah, you get your suppression. There's a lot of ways to do it, but it is possible. You can also use hybrid armor, so phantom gloves, phantom boots, and then you roll suppression. Definitely possible to do. You can get suppression on the Eldritch Implicit as well. So this is what the stats would look like if you ran a suppression setup. So pretty decent max hit, quite a bit more than the actual other low budget setup. And DPS has gone down by about 100 million. Not that bad, right? Still 300 million DPS. This is enough to like one-shot Maven, pretty much. So that is this setup here, and we do have a shit version, and this is like not using Mage Blood, and we're going to be using Lightning Strike because there's no Nimbus, and Molten Strike without Nimbus is just bad. So Lightning Strike, run Lightning Strike or Smite if you're playing these kind of setups without Mage Blood or Nimbus. But it pretty much hit exactly the same kind of build, except we're running Lightning Strike. We're not using Mage Blood. You could run Tides of Time if you want, but Magnate, a very nice cheap option. Gives you a bit of flask sustain as well, but that's pretty much it. And this is what your stats would look like on a character. And this character, I don't know how much it would be to set up, but maybe like 20 div ish, 10-20 div. But yeah, actually, yeah, because there's like no expensive items, right? Maybe the All's Uprising might be expensive. The Resolute Technique sword might be expensive. You could make your own though, so not that bad. The clusters too, none of these are, I think only a few of these are 35%. Let's just see. No, actually no, none of these are 35% increased effect small clusters. So actually like 20C per cluster. So yeah, this is definitely like 10 div. Anyways, this is what you get for 10 div pretty much. So not that great, right? Okay, so let's look at the Smurf. So Mr. Smurf, you know, it's just bad. I mean, okay, so the only reason Smurf is going to be better than Aristocrat is until you get a Formless Flame. If you own a Formless Flame, then this Ascendancy is just kind of garbage. Because like let's compare for a sec. So I've only made up to the medium budget on this guy because I didn't think it was worth progressing it any further. But this setup is the spell suppression setup with 3 passive voices, running pretty much the identical gear. And let's take a look at the stat difference from the Aristocrat and the Smurf. So Aristocrat, 458k max hit, 900 million DPS. The Smurf, 480 million DPS, 500k max hit. So very underwhelming, I would say, right? You can kind of see it's just not good. And what about stacking fire? You could use Formless Flame on this build too and stack fire and cold, right? But it's just bad. And if you're not a Marauder with what's it called? Xalio Cleansing Water, if you don't have this, then it's not gonna be efficient to stack both resistances. So anyways, this is how I would set it up if I'm running the Smurfcaster. And yeah, let's go on to the other setups. There is another setup. So this one is going to be using the Escape Artist. So it means you have to get suppression, and we're going to be running Ghost Reaver for sustain with Leech. If you do run Spellbreaker, it's going to be easier to get your suppression, and you probably get a little bit more damage reduction, but actually not even that much. You pretty much just drop Ghost Reaver and you have to go to Wicked Ward. And that's pretty much all of the changes. And I know this is like really sad, guys. Like, I would love to pick this up with that jewel, right? Whatever it's called, Intuitive Leap. But this guy is so starved on points, he can't even spare enough points for another jewel socket. I mean, you could say, okay, well, why don't we just drop these? But then it's like, there's no point to actually get this and then anoint Champion of the Cause, because this is only 6% increased aura effect, right? So you're actually losing out on the end of the day if you did that. And there is really no other jewel sockets, right? I guess there is here 3 points, but yeah, it's really tight, right? You could probably work something out, but I don't like this because the tree is so spread out and it's just very, very bad stats at the end of the day. Okay, and then we also do have a low budget version. So this one is probably a little bit more realistic for, I don't know, maybe a couple of days into the league. We're not running any forbidden jewels in this setup. So damage, okay, not bad. Max hit also pretty good. And what we're doing is just the same thing as the Aristocrat. We're getting our 46% block, and then we're going spell suppression. So actually pretty easy to get spell suppression because we can just grab all this stuff here and here and craft a little bit on our gear. We can use the Phantom Mitts over here, so we get some suppression here, and then we get to use March of the Legion, or you can use some Phantom Boots like this with spell suppression on them, so, you know, you get a little bit more suppression. It might help you out. I think this is using a few suppression tattoos, or not really that much, maybe like 1 or 2. Or actually, no, we're not using them. But anyways, this is how you would set it up on a very minimal budget. You see the items we're using, all self-crafted gear, just March of the Legion, All's Uprising, Nimbus Mageblood, and the rest is pretty easy. The small clusters these are all 35% increased effect though. And then we do have the shit version 2 on this, and it is pretty bad. Actually, kind of the same stats as, what would you say, the Aristocrat, right? So the stats actually kind of similar at these lower budgets, right? Because I guess, anyways, so this is kind of how I would set it up. There's no spell suppression in this. I mean, you could go for spell suppression because there is definitely points, I think, right? Just like this int stuff you can drop. You can drop the frenzies. You can drop this because we're not even anointing it. That's a funny thing. Oh, actually, are we? Oh, I forgot to change this, but yeah, I'll change it later. But you anoint probably Champion of the Cause, right? Or you could anoint anything. You could do like the Sion's Ambition if you want. But I don't know. I think that's kind of trash anyways. But yeah, you could get rid of all of these, get your spell suppression and that kind of stuff. Also, multi-shot, pretty nice. And if you're running Lightning Strike, get piercing shots. All right, guys, but that is going to be it pretty much for the video. These POBs will be in the Armor Stacker Compendium over here at some point, probably after I release the video. And then, yeah, it'll be pretty fun. I think in the event, I really hope it gets extended because there's a lot of things I want to try out. But anyways, yeah, whenever there's an update, I'll just change the POB in this Google Doc and not in the actual video. So I don't have to go back and update every single video and all that kind of stuff, right? But anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.